Welcome to Celica build episode 3. So as the weather has been turd, I've not been able to do as much as I've hoped. Just finishing up spraying these parts. Today is brake day. I'll show you how I install the brakes. So before you put the discs on, they tend to have a little coating of grease around them. You can tell just by this rippling effect. Just get some brake cleaner and some degreaser on there and just get any of this off. So when we've put the pads on, we're not slipping and sliding everywhere. But just get a rag and just scrub away at the surface. Just get any of that old grease off. Before I put this disc on, I'm just going to check that I've greased everything, and I did this when I took them off, so we should be okay. But I'll just spin the camera around and show you how we're looking. So I've put a layer of grease on this interface here. So this is the hub, and then I've also put some grease on here as well. Not much on there, just a little bit, and it just stops the pieces rusting together. Take off these lug nuts.
One eternity later.
Then we can pop the disc on. You can find the holes.
That's what she said!
Then we'll get the caliper mounting bolts and we'll pop some grease on them. Be really careful to not get any grease on this front face of the pad, because the last thing that we want is grease on there, because the brakes then won't work. So now we've got the pads in place, you can now mount up the actual caliper itself. We're going to put a little bit of grease on these, just a little bit, and then we can get it mounted up. Socket on a ratchet and a 17mm spanner, and if we just hold the slider itself in place and just tighten this bolt, we can tighten the two together. So that is one caliper completely on with new discs as well. So the last thing we need to do is, I've got the brake line in this bag because I'd taken it off. I didn't want it to leak fluid all over the floor. So this is the nut that holds the brake line into the back of the caliper, and before it goes on, you can see it's got a little copper washer on there, and it has one on the opposing side as well. So if you're ever changing brakes, just make sure that you put these back on. If you didn't already know, brake fluid, when it's exposed to moisture, it absorbs water and then it loses its properties. Chuck on a 14mm socket and we'll get that tightened up. Also, I got these from Amazon. I spent £2 and got these guys, and they actually have like a little rubber holding piece on so they won't come off. They just push on there like that. So I know I haven't given people much time to respond on what colour to do the rocker cover, but I think black looks the best. It just seems to go pretty well with the car. I mean, look at that in the sun. That looks great. And also, I don't think I showed you this, but peeled off all of the masking, and now we have the writing. It's actually worked. It's not perfect, but it seems to have worked pretty well. So both brakes are on for the front now. I'll show you the other side. They're looking really good. That black looks really nice actually. But what we've got left to do on the front, once we've got the rears on, is put some new brake fluid in and we can bleed the brakes then. And I've not put this guy on right. Classic. There we go. And that just keeps any dust or muck out of the end of the bleed nipple, so if we ever need to bleed the brakes again, all we have to do is loosen that off and the fluid should flow straight out, and we shouldn't have any issues with it being blocked or clogged. Trusty step ladder. Let's see if we can do this with one hand. Oh yes. So unfortunately I've run out of brake cleaner, but hoping white spirits does the trick. So I've chucked some gloves on because my hands were getting greasy and I don't want to put any grease onto these discs. So we'll keep that protected, and also I've got a cool thing to show you. So usually when cars have calipers on the rear, they've got just a disc brake on there that's connected to the handbrake via a cable. But this one has actually got a drum and disc brake, which is pretty cool. So the drums are used for the handbrake and the discs are used for just general stopping. I think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard, and I feel like it was my cousin that told me this, but drum brakes are supposed to be better for handbrakes and discs are better for general stopping. I think. I don't know. Ed, shout out to you. We'll see what people say in the comments. So I've popped the disc on and I think it's scrubbing on you can hear it. That should be free spinning. So I think what it is I tightened the handbrake when I first got the car. So I'll see if I can show you the old brakes actually. But I think what's happened is I've tightened it up to match that of the old brakes. So now when we've got the new ones in, oh yeah, there's quite a big lip in there actually. Now we've put the new ones in, they're fresh, so they're not going to have any wear on them. So now we've tightened the cable, it's going to be too tight, so I need to take the interior, just put the interior back in. Okay, I need to take the interior out and do that. But these are the old ones, they've just been outside, so they have gone a bit rusty. I mean, these are the old pads, they've barely been used, but they weren't doing anything, so you can see this is that little lip I'm talking about. So if I loosen the handbrake off, I'm hoping that should work. Anyway, we'll come back to sorting the handbrake out. Let's get the calipers on first. I need to stay focused because there's that much stuff going on that I just keep moving around from job to job. So we'll get the calipers on now. These are the calipers and they have one fixed slider. I'll show you. I'll just pull this bolt out. So it stays in one piece essentially. So that will always be at the top of the disc. So if you imagine it mounted vertically, you'd always want that hinged slider to be at the top. For this car, that is, yeah, might not be the same for all cars, I'm not a genius. Right, I've tightened them on with the new bolts from Accu Group. So yeah, if you need bolts, go to them, they're pretty good. Bit expensive, but they do the job. And this is why we have the hinged part at the top. So we can pull it back, should be able to just rest it up there. I don't want to let go because it looks like it's going to fall off. Rest it up there and then we can put the pads in. Ta-da! They're on. So again, just grease them up before I put them in. I also put a little bit of grease on these slidey things, the slidey clips. Just a note, if you are planning on changing your brakes, it's always worth looking at a caliper piston pushback tool. Some calipers, they actually need to be rotated and pushed at the same time. So the brakes on the Scirocco, when I changed them, they're a little bit more complicated than these. They actually needed a special wind back tool, whereas these ones you could just compress them back with your hands. Just make sure that you check that before you start buying parts. One thing to do as well, just to check everything's moving right, just give it a pull and you can see the caliper's moving freely. Finally!
Oh, you just doing on your phone? I thought you was in on
Got wheel one on. Nice Crocs, them.
Active Crocs.
Active Crocs.
Which one's it?
This is like Guido pit stop.
See how fast this is.
Active Crocs.
You get the bolts? Bolts up.
Get the bolts out. Right, we're reassembling the intake manifold. Just popping the bolts in now. I've put that new gasket in between. It's looking pretty good. See if she works. Come on. Have a bisque.
Front wheel's moving a bit mad.
That wheel is moving a bit mad, but it works. Come on. Yeah, buddy. I don't know why, but Manchester will, for some reason, wants to start every car on the drive. So, for some reason, we've got all 3 cars running now. Let's see if she works. Install it, it'd be embarrassing that. Yeah.
Oh, it's not warm anymore. Yeah, it's not warm.
There's a lot quicker.
Japan hasn't that.
Gangster whip, mate. Okay, you're joining me inside Cindy. It's a couple of days later and she still works. She's idling really well now, so you can see we're on just about 800 RPM. The car is warm, but idle seems to be way lower and a lot better, and the car is running at far more smooth than it was before. So good end result, and things are looking really good. Another cool thing as well, got rid of the on or on button and wired up my new button here, and it's all now wired in. So turn it on and we've got lights in the front, lights in the back, and it's just by this switch so the battery doesn't drain. Apologies, it's a bit dark, but what we're going to do is end the episode here and we'll come back on a new day and start working on some new things. I really want to get the aerial sorted, so that's the next thing on the list. And I've also got a drive shaft that I need to fit as well. So whether we take that to a garage or not, we'll see. But so far, so good. Things are looking really good for Cindy, and I'm really happy with how far we've got. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you in the next one.